Thank you for listening to my audio reading. If you enjoyed it so far, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you. The next day, him and Hall left their homes and returned to Cheese Station C again, where they still expected somehow to find their cheese. The station hadn't changed. The cheese was no longer there. The little people didn't know what to do. Him and Hall just stood there, immobilized like two statues. Hall shut his eyes as tight as he could and put his hands over his ears. He just wanted to block everything out. He didn't want to know the cheese supply had gradually been getting smaller. He believed it had been moved all of a sudden. Him analyzed the situation over and over, and eventually his complicated brain, with its huge belief system, took hold. Why did they do this to me? He demanded. What's really going on here? Finally, Hall opened his eyes and looked around and said, By the way, where are Sniff and Scurry? Do you think they know something we don't? Him scoffed. What would they know? Him continued, They're just simple mice. They just respond to what happens. We're little people. We're smarter than mice. We should be able to figure this out. I know we're smarter, Hall said, but we don't seem to be acting smarter at the moment. Things are changing around here, Him. Maybe we need to change and do things differently. Why should we change? Him asked. We're little people. We're special. This sort of thing should not happen to us. Or if it does, we should at least get some benefits. Why should we get benefits? Hall asked. Because we're entitled, Him claimed. Entitled to what? Hall wanted to know. We're entitled to our cheese. Why? Hall asked. Because we didn't cause this problem, Him said. Somebody else did this, and we should get something out of it. Hall suggested maybe we should stop analyzing the situation so much and just get going and find some new cheese. Oh no, Him argued. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. While Him and Hall were still trying to decide what to do, Sniff and Scurry were already well on their way. They went further into the maze, up and down corridors, looking for cheese in every cheese station they could find. They didn't think of anything else but finding new cheese. They didn't find anything for some time until they finally went into an area of the maze where they had never been before. Cheese Station N. They squealed with delight. They found what they had been looking for, a great supply of new cheese. They could hardly believe their eyes. It was the biggest store of cheese the mice had ever seen. In the meantime, Him and Hall were still back in Cheese Station C, evaluating their situation. They were now suffering from the effects of having no cheese. They were becoming frustrated and angry and were blaming each other for the situation they were in. Now and then, Hall thought about his mice friends, Sniff and Scurry, and wondered if they had found any cheese yet. He believed they might be having a hard time, as running through the maze usually involves some uncertainty. But he also knew that it was likely to only last for a while. Sometimes Hall would imagine Sniff and Scurry finding new cheese and enjoying it. He thought about how good it would be for him to be out on an adventure in the maze. and to find fresh new cheese. He could almost taste it. The more clearly Hall saw the image of himself finding and enjoying the new cheese, the more he saw himself leaving Cheese Station C. "Let's go," he exclaimed all of a sudden. "No," Him quickly responded. "I like it here. It's comfortable. It's what I know. Besides, it's dangerous out there." "No, it isn't," Hall argued. "We've run through many parts of the maze before, and we can do it again." "I'm getting too old for that," Him said, "and I'm afraid I'm not interested in getting lost and making a fool of myself. Are you?" With that, Hall's fear of failing returned, and his hopes of finding new cheese faded. So every day, the little people continued to do what they had done before. They went to Cheese Station C, found no cheese, and returned home, carrying their worries and frustrations with them. They tried to deny what was happening, but found it harder to get sleep, had less energy the next day, and were becoming irritable. Their homes were not the nurturing places they once were. The little people had difficulty sleeping and were having nightmares about not finding any cheese. But Him and Hall still returned to Cheese Station C and waited there every day. Him said, "You know, if we just work harder, we'll find that nothing has really changed that much. The cheese is probably nearby. Maybe they just hid it behind the wall." The next day, Him and Hall returned with tools. Him held the chisel while Hall banged the hammer until they made a hole in the wall of Cheese Station C. They peered inside, but found no cheese. They were disappointed, but believed they could solve the problem. So they started earlier, stayed longer, and worked harder. But after a while, all they had was a large hole in the wall. Hall was beginning to realize the difference between activity and productivity. "Maybe," Him said, "we should just sit here and see what happens. Sooner or later, they have to put the cheese back." Hall wanted to believe that, so each day he went home to rest and returned reluctantly with Him to Cheese Station C, but cheese never reappeared. By now, the little people were growing weak from hunger and stress. Hall was getting tired of just waiting for their situation to improve. He began to see that the longer they stayed in their cheeseless station, the worse off they would be. Hall knew they were losing their edge. Finally, one day, Hall began laughing at himself. "Hall, Hall, look at us. We keep doing the same things over and over again and wondering why things don't get better. If this wasn't so ridiculous, it would be even funnier." Hall did not like the idea of having to run through the maze again because he knew he would get lost and have no idea where he would find any cheese. But he had to laugh at his folly when he saw what his fear was doing to him. He asked Him, "Where did we put our running shoes?" It took a long time to find them because they had put everything away when they found their cheese at Cheese Station C, thinking they wouldn't be needing them anymore. As Him saw his friend getting into his running gear, he said, "You're not really going out into the maze again, are you? Why don't you just wait here with me until they put the cheese back?" "Because you just don't get it," Hall said. "I don't want to see it either, but now I realize they're never going to put Yesterday's cheese back. It's time to find new cheese, Him argued. But what if there is no cheese out there? Or even if there is, what if you don't find it? I don't know, Hall said. He had asked himself those same questions too many times and felt the fears again that kept him where he was. He asked himself, where am I more likely to find cheese? Here or in the maze? He painted a picture in his mind. He saw himself venturing out into the maze with a smile on his face. While this picture surprised him, it made him feel good. He saw himself getting lost now and then in the maze, but felt confident he would eventually find new cheese out there and all the good things that came with it. He gathered his courage. Then he used his imagination to paint the most believable picture he could with the most realistic details of him finding and enjoying the taste of new cheese. He saw himself eating Swiss cheese with holes in it, bright orange cheddar and American cheese, Italian mozzarella, and wondered softly, fresh Camembert cheese. And then he heard him say something and realized they were still at Cheese Station C. Hall said, sometimes, him, things change and they are never the same again. This looks like one of those times. That's life. Life moves on. And so should we. Paul looked at his companion and tried to talk sense to him. But him's fear had turned into anger and he wouldn't listen. Hall didn't mean to be rude to his friend, but he had to laugh at how silly they both looked. As Hall prepared to leave, he started to feel more alive, knowing that he was finally able to laugh at himself, let go, and move on. Hall laughed and announced, it's maze time. Him didn't laugh, and he didn't respond. Hall picked up a small, sharp rock and wrote a serious thought on the wall for him to think about. As was his custom, Hall even drew a picture of cheese around it, hoping it would help him to smile, lighten up, and go after the new cheese. But him didn't want to see it. It read, if you do not change, you can become extinct.